The year is 1975. The Vietnam War finally comes to an end. The Oldsmobile Cutlass is the #1 selling car in America.
Look, Cutlass Supreme. Great style, improved gas mileage, enough room and comfort for 6 people.
Sony introduces the Betamax and JVC introduces the VHS, officially launching the videotape format war.
The Sony Betamax. Its only purpose is to serve you.
You know, they just don't make shows like that anymore. Think they'll ever bring it back?
I doubt it.
Jaws is released in theaters, and everyone's afraid to go back into the water.
We're not only going to have to close the beach, we're going to have to hire somebody to kill the shark.
Bad fish.
Captain and Tennille are atop the charts. And one marimba is stealing all of our hearts. Your softball team continues to struggle to score. But after the game at Lums, well, no one else will give you more.
I am crazy about Lums gourmet burger, green peppers, mushrooms.
I love the Ali burger.
Don't nobody move until I get my bacon burger.
All Lums burgers are cooked to order. All choice beef.
Maybe Lums will name one after me. Say you already have, Mr. Burrow. That's why they're called hamburgers. Lums, no one else will give you more.
Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to Retro Pop Planet. And ever since I started doing this series, Discontinued Foods, this by far is probably the most requested type of video for me to do. And I guess the restaurant Lums really holds a special place for a lot of folks that grew up during that time period. Now the year we chose, 1975, Lums was going very strong at this point. They were popping up all over the place, but it's also a period before I was bored. So I had to really dig into the archives and do a lot of research on this episode. I also don't have any experience with a Lums because growing up where I did in Texas, we did not have a Lums. And then by the time we moved to Virginia, the Lums in this area had already gone away. But I do have experience with one particular chain, and that is Ollie's Trolley. And Ollie's has a very deep connection to the Lums franchise. Long story short, Oliver Gleichenhaus was a Florida-based restaurateur operating a sandwich shop in Miami Beach, Florida. He created his signature Ollie burger in the 1930s, which had a secret blend of some 23 odd herbs and spices. By all accounts, he was a real character. To cut to the chase, he was a real pain in the ass and would regularly curse out his diners for making special requests, like adding ketchup to his burgers. The same guy that purchased Kentucky Fried Chicken from Harlan Sanders in 1964, a John Brown Jr., was looking for a new opportunity after selling off that franchise in 1971. He purchased the struggling restaurant group Lums and instantly started seeking ways to increase brand revenue. He purchased the recipe for the Ollie burger and Ollie fries from Gleichenhaus and incorporated it into Lums restaurants. Around the same time, he came up with a unique trolley car concept for patrons seeking a walk-up dining experience. Thus, Ollie's Trolleys was formed. They expanded quickly in the 1970s, but ultimately weren't that successful for a number of reasons. This location was the last standalone Ollie's brick and mortar restaurant. Supposedly there are still 2 trolley car restaurants in operation out there. As for Lums, in 1978, the 273 restaurant chain was purchased by Swiss-based company Wienerwald Holdings AG, the holding company for the Wienerwald restaurant group. But having overextended itself, it filed for bankruptcy in 1982, and all remaining franchise restaurants were forced to close. A year later, the original Miami location also went out of business. The final standalone location in Bellevue, Nebraska remained in operation until 2017, when it it too shuttered its doors. The 2019 Martin Scorsese film The Irishman has an entire scene with narration describing in loving detail the assembly of the famous Lums quarter-pound hot dogs simmered in beer. I belong to a historical Facebook group for my area, and there has been a long-running thread of folks reminiscing about their time at Lums. I asked around, and one user wrote to me about his own personal experience. All right, we are in Fairfax County, Virginia. I don't have any familiarity with Lums. They were long gone before we even moved to this area. But this group page that I follow on Facebook of people that were remembering Lums, a ton of different locations in this area popped up that people were remembering. Some were in malls, some were in buildings that have since been bulldozed and they were turned into something else. But several people actually spoke about this one specific location in Fairfax that they would walk to after work and grab beers. When I discovered where the location actually is, it kind of blew my mind, because this restaurant we went to once at Easter when it was just a Italian restaurant. We went for the buffet, and then it turned into like a Lebanese restaurant, and then it burned down. So I wanted to get to this location before the restaurant is torn down. So here we are across the street from where I was just standing on a very, very busy, noisy road. If you saw my Johnny Depp video, the courthouse for Johnny Depp and Amber Heard trial was just down the road here. So this is a very busy area. And this was the Lums that everyone was talking about. And it's hard to miss this distinct red metal roof, and the sign even looks like an original Lums sign. As I mentioned, I came here one time for Easter dinner, and the interior was all, Italian restaurant, and they had a buffet. It had a very old feel to it, and after seeing some interiors of people's photos on just Google, doing Google image searches, this very much was a Lums. I would imagine it probably closed sometime in like 82 or 83 when most of the chain went bankrupt, and then they closed all of their locations. I really wanted to document it just because of the red roof. So this area here looks very, very original. And again, there's that distinct red roof. You can see the fans in here are completely like burned up. And this was an outside seating area, so I'm wondering if maybe one of those, exterior heaters or something caught this tarp on fire. I captured this video in the spring of 2023, and I'm glad I did, because in the early spring of this year, this building was torn down as well as the bank next door to make room for new luxury condos. With the exception of this outside seating area, this whole restaurant seems to be pretty original. I have a satellite database that I use to compare and contrast, and all throughout the 1970s, it retained pretty much the same shape. They might have added on a section here at one point, because the original Lums, I think, was just a box, and this one has sort of like an L shape to it. I would imagine all through the 70s that this was a Lums, and then again, like they might have closed in like the early 80s. It has a chain link fence, no trespassing around this entire property. There's a very dead plant right there. I wish you could actually get a chance to see inside better, because like these number plates look original. It's kind of hard to see, it won't focus, but there's number plates in there that look pretty original, and I can actually see some doorways inside that still have a very distinct like western, country western feel to them, very 1970s like steakhouse. And these light fixtures are also very 1970s. Now when it was a Lums, you would have had an awning here, but you would have had that red and white stripes, and there either was like a giant Lums sign here, but this signage is definitely part of the original restaurant. And it is old and worn. It would have said Lums here as well, and then probably either it was completely square or it had a bit of decoration on top like the other Lums. We actually went to this church for a very short time when we first moved here back in the late 80s. And I wish I could tell you I remember what that was, at the time, I just can't. I don't even know if I ever really even noticed it before. So before we get on to the process of making these hot dogs, we've got one more location to go to, and that is Ollie's Trolley in downtown DC, where we can still get an original Ollie burger and the Ollie fries. So let's go there now. I made it to Ollie's Trolley in Washington, a Washington landmark. There's only a few of these left in existence, and they were a franchise, but now they're individually owned and operated, and they share spiritual DNA with Lums, and you can still get fries, and you can get the Ollie burger, which they sold at Lums. However, I did ask, the hot dogs are not the same, so we're still gonna have to figure out our own hot dog recipe. I made a much longer video about Ollie's earlier this year, so instead of rehashing that video, I'll provide a link to it. And sad to say, this location is now closed. I found a picture of a very old menu card, and from it we can gather a few key ingredients. We know the hot dogs were a 1/4 pound and steamed in beer. I have also learned that one popular topping was their sherry sauerkraut. I'm really intrigued by this topping, so I'm gonna attempt to make it. About a year ago, I attempted to make my own sauerkraut as part of this video. While not a particularly difficult thing to make, I did have a slight issue with water extraction with my cabbage. I eventually had to make a cup of saline to add to the jar. I think it took about 4 weeks to fully come together. While it tasted fine, I decided that for my final video, I was just going to go with store-bought kraut. And I really like this Cleveland brand as an option. I've never purchased sherry before, but this store only had one kind, so that's what I'm using. I trekked all over trying to find 1/4 pound dogs until I remembered that Costco sells the same brand that they offer in the restaurant. Because we're using oversized hot dogs, we need oversized buns. You've seen me use these hoagie rolls in other videos. And as for our hot dog water recipe, there are a number of different sites online offering up slight variations of the same recipe that was posted to the Villages forum in 2013. Some food items I have at home, but we also need an onion, brown mustard, and beer. Lums had a surprisingly diverse beer menu, but for the hot dogs, I'll bet they were pulling from the cheapest keg. You betcha, Bud Heavy. So let's get to work. 1 can of beer. I'm using 2 cups since I don't have any single 12-ounce cans. You then want the equivalent of 2 cans of water, 1 teaspoon garlic, 1 teaspoon caraway seeds, 1 teaspoon sugar. I turned my range to medium-high and set 2 hot dogs into the water. I forgot to add the onion at this stage, but remember to dice and add a cup of them to the mix a little later. While we bring them back up to a brisk simmer, I set to work on the sherry sauerkraut. Originally I was going to just drizzle it on top, but thought it would taste more authentic if I combined in a saucepan on low setting. I added a 1/4 cup of sherry for 1 cup of sauerkraut, since I'm the only one that's going to be eating this. One complaint about this recipe, as it were, is that the hot dogs don't really taste like beer. I poked several holes into the skin while they were simmering, so hopefully they'll capture a little more flavor. I let them do their thing for about 25 minutes, and they smelled amazing. One of the old menu photos I found shows a Lums dog with sauerkraut and ground mustard, so I prepped my 2 buns. According to the Irishman, they were finished on the grill top with beer. Just listen to that sizzle. I left them on there for about 2 to 3 minutes so they could brown up slightly as the beer boiled off. I then transferred the hot dogs to my buns and topped with the sauerkraut. Okay guys, welcome back. Before I show the final shots, I really hope that I did this justice. This is one that I've been working on for probably over a year, I think. Stick around for the final presentation. I'm gonna get out of here for now, and I'll see y'all in the next video. Cheers.